To the outside world, Kamikaze Chris was a fearless driver, a force to be reckoned with on the streets. His will to win seemed unstoppable, but street racing isn't just about speed. It's a high-stakes game where even the best can't outrun fate forever. Just when it seemed like Chris had solidified his legacy, disaster struck, turning his world upside down in an instant. So what really happened, and where does he go from here? This is the heartbreaking story of Kamikaze Chris and the tragedy that changed everything. Chris, the man behind that menacing flat black El Camino on Street Outlaws, isn't the kind of guy most would peg as a street racing powerhouse. By all accounts, he wasn't supposed to make it, but time and time again, he shatters expectations. And here's the thing, it was never part of some grand plan. Life just took him down this road and he ran with it. Because for Chris, being the underdog is all he has ever known. Growing up in a working-class home in a tough part of Oklahoma City, Chris didn't have much. In his own words, his family wasn't just struggling, they were flat out broke. Not the tight on money kind of broke, but the kind where hand-me-down clothes weren't just second-hand, they were worn thin, stained, and already past their prime. If he wanted anything beyond the basics, that was on him to figure out. And for Chris, there was only one thing worth chasing: racing, but not cars, at least not at first. Chris started with dirt bikes, and if you ask him why, he'll tell you. He's not necessarily a car guy, he's a racing guy. If it's got wheels, he'll race it. A dirt bike, a shopping cart, probably even a lawnmower if you put one in front of him. By the time he was 3, he was already on a motorcycle, and he never looked back. While most kids his age were playing in the park, he was working every odd job he could find just to keep his bike running. Twice a week, he lined up at the starting gate, racing against riders nearly twice his age. But that didn't faze him. He had a hunger to win, a love for speed, and a work ethic that set him apart. That work ethic? He got it from his dad, a successful dragboat racer with one simple rule. You break it, you fix it. Chris took that to heart. He mowed lawns, chopped trees, pumped gas, anything to scrape together the cash for his next ride. From a BMX bike to his first dirt bike, every upgrade was earned. And once he got a taste of real competition, there was no stopping him. Right around that time, he wasn't just racing, he was helping others get faster too, especially when it came to their cars. Back in high school, when Kamikaze first crossed paths with Justin Big Chief Shearer, it was like two puzzle pieces snapping into place. Both were fiercely competitive, both lived and breathed cars, and neither one ever backed down from a challenge. In fact, it was Kamikaze who first gave Big Chief that now iconic nickname. But their bond wasn't just built on speed, it was forged in the late-night grind of the garage. Kamikaze wasn't just the guy talking fast and driving faster. He was the one out in the driveway, night after night, wrenching on Big Chief's 1972 Pontiac Le Mans, better known as the Crow. And to them, it wasn't just a car. It was the foundation of their friendship, the machine they built with their own hands, one late-night fix at a time. That hands-on experience set Kamikaze on his own path. First, he picked up a Chevy LUV with a small block. Then came a Blazer, also a small block, and eventually an A-body Chevelle. That Chevelle, though, was something else. A 71 covered in a loud emerald green paint job that looked like it belonged on a base boat. It wasn't pretty, but it had attitude, and it was fast. Running nines, tearing up the streets, a real rowdy piece of machinery, but cars come and go, and the game never stops. Kamikaze stayed tight with a core group of OKC racers who weren't just out there to cruise, they were out to dominate. Plenty of guys showed up just to be part of the scene, to hang out and show off their rides. But for Kamikaze, Big Chief, Dave Comstock, and the rest of their crew, racing wasn't just something to do, it was serious. That dedication showed in the way Kamikaze drove. If he had to muscle the car down the road to win, that's exactly what he did. He wasn't reckless, he was calculated. But he pushed harder than most, always riding that fine line between control and chaos. That's where the nickname Kamikaze came from. He had a way of making even the wildest situations look effortless. To him, driving was pure instinct. While some people needed a drink to unwind or distractions to escape, Kamikaze found his peace at full throttle, inches from disaster. That's where he thrived. The rush, the edge, the pure adrenaline of knowing he was pushing both himself and his car to the absolute limit. That was what made him feel alive. And it wasn't long before that attitude got him noticed. When he joined Big Chief on Street Outlaws in its 3rd season, he brought that raw, no-holds-barred energy to the screen. The show helped take drag racing mainstream, and Kamikaze Chris became one of the most talked-about racers in the country. And with that, he became the proud owner of what might just be the most famous El Camino in the game. Now, before Chris got his hands on the El Camino, The car belonged to his childhood friend, Tyler Flip Pretty. Everybody called it the Slut because it was a Frankenstein build pieced together with all the leftover parts from their friends' cars whenever they upgraded. But that didn't stop it from making a name for itself. When Flip rolled up in the first season of Street Outlaws, that car had everybody talking. It was loud, obnoxious, and straight up ridiculous. Those zoomy headers shot nitrous fires right out of the fenders, and the rumors about how it was held together only added to the legend. People swore it was patched up with silicone, JB Weld, duct tape, and enough Bondo to fill a swimming pool. And when Flip pulled up to collect his winnings, that made the law sting just a little bit more. The Slut might have been a mess, but it was fast. When Flip passed away, his longtime friend Justin Big Chief Shearer knew there was only one person who should have the car: Chris. No second guessing, no hesitation. The car had been sitting under a tarp for over a year, gathering dust, waiting for the right hands to bring it back to life. And when Chris finally turned the key, the engine didn't just start. It roared, as if it had been waiting for him all along. But a car like that wasn't just going to come out of retirement quietly. On its first real drive, one of the rear brakes locked up and caught fire, and that was just the start. Before long had broken it so badly that it needed a full rebuild. That's when he struck a deal to drop in a friend's already built 582 engine. He wasn't happy about it. Chris had always built his own engines. Taking someone else's work felt wrong. Turns out his instincts were right. That 582 turned into a nightmare. 13 rebuilds in a single season. It was like running a funny car team. Race, rebuild, blow it up, rebuild, over and over. It was enough to break anyone. But when you're chasing speed, that's just part of the game. Chris had had enough of the headaches. It was time to move forward, so he made the call. Digging into his savings, he teamed up with Graham Jones at Fast Times Motorworks to build something serious, an all-aluminium 632 with 4 stages of nitrous. On top of that, he and his buddy Les tackled a back-half chassis conversion right in the garage. The goal? Simple. Get back on OKC's top 10 list. By the summer of 2017, he was back in the mix, winning races and making his presence known. But deep down, something still wasn't right. The car wasn't running the way he really wanted, and settling was never an option. Under the hood, the drivetrain was a mix of fresh and seasoned parts, all put together for one job: going fast. Kincaid Racing Engines, out in Arizona, handled the engine build, relying on Wise Co. for the rotating assembly and Kruger & Pack for the valve train. They switched over to electronic fuel injection, using parts from fuel injector development with a Haltech EFI system calling the shots. That same Haltech setup also controlled the El Camino's 6-stage nitrous system. Because why stop at 4? All that power meant traction was a constant battle. If the car wasn't set up right, it was just wasted horsepower. The stock front-end design was holding it back, so Autofab Race Cars in Maryland built a new chromoly tube front end, and Chris and Les handled the installation right in the garage. While they were at it, they yanked the radiator to shave some weight. Instead of traditional cooling, the engine now ran on ice water pumped from a tank in the back. The suspension was tuned to perfection, with QA1 adjustable coilovers and pack springs at all 4 corners, ensuring a balance of control and aggression. Power flowed through a Powerglide transmission straight to a Moser 9-inch rear end, all while keeping the original 4-link setup intact. But, despite the modern upgrades, the car hadn't lost its G-body soul. Still a little unpredictable, a little wild, just the way Chris liked it. For all the upgrades though, there were some things that just couldn't be changed. The El Camino's stock wheelbase sat at a lengthy 117 inches, and Chris pointed out that the driveshaft alone was 62.5 inches, not exactly ideal for a race car. The cab's placement, technically a car but with the feel of a truck, meant that shifting everything back for better weight distribution just wasn't in the cards. It rolled on 2 9.5x10, 5 Hoosier slicks, gripping the track as best they could. But every pass was still an adventure, and that was part of the fun. As long as he wasn't on fire, Chris was good. To Chris, racing isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Every bolt, every dent, every late night in the garage tells a story of sacrifice. That car isn't just a machine, it's built from busted knuckles, sleepless nights, and every spare dollar he could find, sometimes even the ones he couldn't. By day, he runs a small heating and air conditioning business. By night, long after the world has gone to sleep, he's in the garage, cleaning the Lexan windows, checking spark plugs, dialing in the tires, double-checking the brakes. He doesn't have the luxury of throwing money at problems, so he makes sure nothing is left to chance. Guys like him, working class, self-funded, running a car built in a home garage, aren't supposed to go wheel to wheel with the big names, and yet he does. More than once, the cost of racing has pushed him to the edge. He's been dead broke while competing in this very show. But that underdog label, that's not a gimmick, that's just reality. He'll tell you himself, he's stubborn, he's proud, and that's exactly what it takes to build, race, and win with an El Camino. Of course, he doesn't do it alone. Behind every great racer is a team, and support from companies like Haltech, Speedmaster, and Wolf Aircraft Products helps keep him in the fight.